Good evening. This is the March 4th, 2025 meeting of the Portsmouth Energy Advisory Committee. And I'll take the roll. Tracy,
Here,
Tracy Cameron, and Herb Lloyd,
Here.
Tom Rooney,
Here.
and Kevin Jarrett.
Here.
We do not have Betsy Blaisdell, who I guess is still in France. We don't have Ben D'Antonio. We don't have Peter Somsich.
Ben's on Zoom, it looks like.
Oh, okay. And I'll just kick us off here. We delegated to staff based on a council motion, feasibility study for the Jones Avenue landfill solar array. That work is very active under Peter Rice and Peter Britz. They're having meetings with engineering folks, with industry folks, and they're looking at all the regulatory aspects. And there's a site walk coming up that they're going to do with the experts that they're working with. I thought that while we're waiting for that feasibility to study to come back to us, we could profitably spend our time looking at various large solar arrays around the state. And I made a little grid for you of various projects. And I was struck by the wide variety of financing schemes, of how much or how little the various towns got. So, you know, I think while Peter's folks are doing their feasibility analysis on the more technical aspects, it's a chance for us to look at finances of some of these projects around the state. Fundamentally, they all benefit the towns and don't involve, I mean, they all have great return on investment in one way or another. Solar energy just does. So to that end, I invited Bill Baber is the chairman of the Dover Energy Commission, and to hear a little bit about how you got started going down this road with your sewer plant. And then we'll take some time to talk about CPCNH. And there's a lot happening there. I sent you the responses from our questions that we developed as a group. We can talk about that. And then there's things happening on the legislative front. But Bill has been kind enough to drive down to Dover, so we put him on the agenda first. Welcome.
Welcome. Nice to be here. Didn't know you were going to be talking about CPCNH. I should confess I chair the Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee for CPCNH.
Good for you. Good for you. Are you a director as well? Or?
I'm not.
Okay.
At the moment.
Yeah. Well, I just thought we could start off, if you could just tell us the story of how you came to initiate your study in Dover to put a large solar array in. Had that been an objective of your Energy Commission for a long time?
Yes. About as long as I've been on the commission, we've been trying to get that done. We did a project, solar that we have so far. We've been about nearly a decade now. I guess we have solar on our Children's Museum. The city owns the building the Children's Museum is in, and the adjoining indoor pool. And then about almost simultaneously with that, we did the new high school, which is a 1 megawatt AC installation. It was the largest in the state rooftop at the time. both those projects were PPAs, and done without any, this is before Inflation Reduction Act, funding was available, so they were done with straight PPAs. And they've both been
Maybe just
successful.
explain power purchase agreements for folks who might be watching at home.
So this is essentially a way of, instead of the municipality putting up funding for it, a financier will put up the funds and essentially own the facility. And essentially, it's essentially got a lease from the city until the city determines to buy it out. And the city is in the process of buying the two from the Children's Museum and from the indoor pool. And because the school district is the school district, they have not been putting money aside to buy theirs, but the city has been trying to do that. But we're purchasing those out at the end of 6 years. And it's even without the payment in lieu of taxes, it's been financially attractive to us on balance.
Yeah.
It's not, wow, you know, it's sort of a toss up with what we would have gotten if we just stayed on the grid, but it will start paying greater economic benefits the longer it's in production. We can always hope for better regulatory environment in this state because we don't get well compensated for all the benefits that solar produces. And our net metering laws or not all they could be.
No.
I say that, but so power purchase agreement is basically a lease, usually with the option to buy it out. And there's great flexibility. The advantage to the city is you don't have to put up the capital again. And I don't know about Portsmouth, it's just rolling in money. We always think, but
Not this year.
tough. It's a tough call always in Dover. So the wastewater treatment plant is something that we've been thinking about for a long time because there was land there. It's the largest single metered consumer of electric power in the city.
Yeah.
So, and it runs 24/7. So it's a target and there was some available land, not immediately adjoining it, but owned by the city. It sits on I should have brought some of my computer, thinking retrospectively, but it's a parcel ran on the road where the existing plant facilities sit. It's probably 10-ish acres. Then there's a parcel dividing that, which we have a right of way down the side of it. That's about 10, 15 acres. Not really sure. Eversource owns that. And that is a landfill that has been out of commission since 1970s. It's actually expired out of the EPA oversight of it. And DES's oversight too. And it's coal ash waste from Portsmouth. Sorry.
Yeah, we sent a lot to a lot of places.
And then adjoining that and between that and the river is about 20 acres. It goes to a bluff to the river, and that's half of that's wooded and half of that maybe somewhat mysteriously used in the past. We think there might be some tannery spoils on the site. It's also capped. So originally it was when we were doing those other projects, it just the cost benefits weren't working out for that site. Part of it was just lack of city resources. And the thing that changed our environment more than anything else was having staff that we finally, it took us 3 years, but we got, what we're asking for was an energy manager. We got a resilience coordinator who turned out to be superb hire. Just got hired away this past year to CPC&H, unfortunately.
That was Jackson.
Jackson Kaspari. And he has a PhD in chemistry, and so he was great with data and really great with numbers and helped push these projects along. And we had well, a lot's happened over that time. I mean, it's a sort of a Goldilocks site, as the industry would say, because it has enough land to power the full consumption of the wastewater treatment plant. That gets fuzzy because the wastewater treatment plant's running 24/7. Solar, it's not doing that. But there's still enough land just with what the city currently owns. Then there is sufficient capacity on the existing lines to that area because the wastewater treatment plant is a big consumer. And there's capacity at the substation, which is, and this is the sort of things that you're going to get into that can really drive costs. And so we're anxious now to make sure that we are in the queue to attach to that substation and before somebody else finds a plot of land and goes after it. Because if you're not near capacity on the lines, if you're not near a substation that can accept the additional load, the cost of installation just goes up tremendously. So those are working out. So we thought we're on a path to a sort of quick process. I'll come back to that because the process is impossible to be quick at this point. And that is that this land that Eversource owned, we were had a joint meeting with them to talk about connectivity to their grid. And in that meeting, someone from Eversource said, well, you have any interest in this land? And so we said, well, depends, we're not going to take any liability responsibility for it, but if you're interested, we're interested. And so they said, okay, after, I said, well, in 3 weeks, we'll get back to you. 3 months later, they said, it looks like we could do it. So for now, for about 3 months, we've been waiting for them to contact DES. Get DES's perspective on whether or not it's a suitable site to build on top of a cap landfill. And it's relatively flat as cap landfills go, but it's so we're regulatory questions right now. So that we've got that land that would allow us to double the size. So we still need to have that question answered before we make a decision. We've not gone out to RFPs yet. And the one thing that I think was really wise that we did, if we did I can't remember what the term is, but we did a contract. Is very specific title, and again, it's not my area. I forgot what it's called. POI. And what a POI is. Anyway, and that agreement just covers an initial engineering study, sort of lightweight study to kind of really understand what is feasible on the property and make fairly good, but still not, production level understanding of what the land could support. And then it is their filing. We did that contract with Revision Energy, and they're have filed the interconnection queue application with Eversource. And one of the reasons we did that is because we knew that unless something happens, Eversource is, for the larger projects, is taking about 2 years or more to approve them, finish the entire approval process. So we knew that there was going to be time. We just need to get that application in as quickly as we could.
Yeah, I think an Eversource spokesman said they're getting 2 or 3 a month.
I just
Don't have the bandwidth.
or the interest in adding staff to do more work. Because it's been like this for basically since the state law changed, allowing municipalities to go up to 5 megawatts. So almost as soon as the law changed, the queue backlog started up. For smaller projects, they're estimating it's, fair amount faster. a lot of that, in all fairness to them, is caused by um, they'll come and do an initial review and then questions come up, so what, this sizing doesn't work, or, whatever. So we like to drop the size a little bit or something, or, but there's a environmental issue or whatever. Anyway, there's a lot of back and forth with most installations, and particularly if you're going to have to add capacity to get to the solar. And we also actually looked at a second site that we thought would be the first one that we had approached on a large scale. The law changed. And that was one on, it's probably similar, probably not as big as yours, but another capped landfill. So a city dump. It's a Superfund site. It's also expired out. And just as we started looking at that, the EPA got a new manager on this area, and he decided that it was time to do a complete review of it. So that site's probably not economically viable anyway, because it's one of the things we learned from that. It's 2 miles from a high tension line. We'd have to build a substation. Interconnect, just getting the cables to the substation is about $1 million a mile.
Yeah.
You'd have to get approval from adjoining city to run across their property. And we just struck a deal with CELT to take over the portion of the low line land adjacent to it. But it was really tempting because right across the river, and it sits close to the river, and it's right next to your watershed for their potable water. So it deserves good attention. Across the river is the county complex, Stratford County complex, and they've been looking at building. They have a fair amount of land and they're interested in building something. So we thought we might be able to do something together. The oversight just does not look feasible, and the county's having a lot of trouble just getting it going. And they'll have to do some land swaps around. They'll have to try and get some of their farmland back, I think, from a conservation group and trade off something else for it. So that's kind of where we are. I think the big lessons learned there are try and get some knowledgeable people on site as quickly as you can to give you some good feedback about what you've got. If you've got the one thing, I hiked land near there before, and that's a large site, I think. Yeah, how many acres do you have?
It's at least 7. That's in the fence. And then there's much more around it.
The whole trail system.
Yeah.
In there, yeah.
What's the maximum you could use?
Oh, we could use more than 7. Everything, we use everything in the fence. Which is more like 7.5, I think.
I think you need, and this is something I haven't looked at in quite a while, but I think you need something close to about 20 to get to 5 megawatts on average. Which is the most the city can do. If you had space, I was wondering about this, to go beyond 5, then you could be a utility scale project. And that that offers a lot different advantage. You can sell then to ISO New England instead of being constrained by, which is good and bad, and there are fluctuating prices. But right now you'd be selling, this winter you'd be selling gold.
Yeah.
For anything you produce. So it's and when you get to that scale, then the cost for the interconnections, become more trivial compared to the benefit.
Right. So does yours reach that scale with all those different pieces of land?
No, we're probably be at right about 4 megawatts.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
And And I will say, I don't know that we would do that. So one of the decisions is, has to be economic. And unless we improve the regulatory environment for solar, it's getting harder to justify. It's a good site because the site will consume a lot of the power, but not all of it. And there's enough power produced that it will cover it at half that scale, which is if we just sit on our own land, there's enough power produced that we would cover everything, all the costs to operate the plant. So, but above that, then you start running into, you're going to get reimbursed at a much lower rate. Depending on how you handle the rest of it. The group net metering is not very financially attractive usually. I think there's maybe one site in the state that's actually doing it.
Yeah.
So most people end up selling the additional power back. And just not rewarded enough for that.
I have a lot of questions in my head, but let's hear from you guys. Questions that you have.
You're looking to take advantage of the IRA.
Well, we were,
Yeah,
so I guess that I'm no expert on this, but I do talk to a lot of people in our legislature and government. My understanding of that falls into tax law, right? So I think it's in law. So I think they'd have to change the law. So that may be around for a while.
Hopefully.
But that really does make a big difference.
it was
But
interesting.
if you do a PPA.
Yeah,
So it's much less apt to get trimmed from the businesses.
Yeah.
They seldom do that. So if they keep it for the business, then you'd still get that benefit. And right now, I was told the benefit to an investor, it's about 38%. So the call, and it may be higher than that. So it's got to be at least 38%. Because they get the 30% reimbursement. If they have the taxes to write it off against, they wouldn't be doing it if they didn't. But they also then get to depreciate it. So it may be much more than that. Say 50% just for speculation. So, but if the tax law changes, then that.
yeah, I was curious, right, with but prior to IRA, a lot of municipalities were doing entering PPAs, and then IRA came along and a big shift towards, it makes more sense financially to own it outright. The municipality, God forbid IRA goes away or changes, we might see a shift, but you'll look at it either way, whether you can own it outright or PPA, you'll look at financially what's the best at that point in time, what's the best option.
And the city had been planning on, when we were talking about 2 megawatts, the intention was originally to purchase it. And I've always been concerned that that would actually happen. Somewhere in the budget, you got to find that money.
Yeah,
And someone wants to take out bonds, if they don't have to. So the financing is a tough choice, and we'll just have to see what the situation's like. If it could be another 1 3/4 years or so before we're doing RFPs.
yeah, a lot changes,
Yeah.
or at least nowadays, it seems like a lot's changing in a short amount of time.
Overnight sometimes.
Yeah. Yes. Hey, thank you.
Bill, with the staff that CPC&H has brought on over the past year, do they step in and provide any assistance to the communities and kind of shuffling through the different scenarios, or is that?
Call Jackson Kaspari and.
Yeah, yeah.
He can come out and consult with you. But yeah, that's a great resource, and I should have mentioned that, but Jackson's great at telling you what CPCNH can do now, and work with the city to help on, projects like
Mhm.
this. And there's another gentleman on board who's a really good project analyst, and he can help evaluate any proposals that you
Mhm.
make.
The 75,000 that you paid to Revision to do your initial study.
Did
Was
I
that-
say that, or
That was in Foster's.
was it? I was thinking it was 56, but go ahead.
I think it was
I
65
know
for
what,
the,
I know what it was. It was for the fee. It was their fee plus the interconnect fee.
right.
That's the difference.
Did that come from your commission up to the council as a recommendation?
Yeah.
And then voted the money.
We have a very good relationship with our commission, our council, and one of the things we do is we do an annual report every year, and we try and provide, what we think. Try to compliment them on their good decisions they made the prior year, and tell them how it's working out, and what we think they need to be paying attention to in the next year.
Right.
And that's proved to be very helpful.
And what was the nature of that initial work that Revision did, that they say, let's figure out the capacity that we could do on the land, what the interconnecting things are, and did they go into the regulatory questions, permitting process that you need to go through?
Well, I think any of the better, solar companies working large scale projects will come in and give you estimates and guidance. We got hooked up in this particular project sort of through a back doorway. We started having conversations with Siemens about doing a city plant-wide energy audit and energy savings performance contract. So again, like the PPA, it's gonna pay for itself, and so. And that's taken us about a year and a half. But we had asked, Siemens had some beyond their scope of expertise and building efficiencies. They have it, it's an enormous company, and they have expertise in transportation. And some in managing large solar installations. So we just told them, all right, here's our scope of things. We're looking at energy. If you want to come back to us with some proposals and tease us with some information, we're happy to hear it. And when they did that, they came, well, first of all, they put us together with some very good transportation experts, and we were able to hook them in with some of our, community services staff, fleet management, and so they could hear, what the future was looking like for, heavy equipment in particular, and the benefits and cost associated with it. So that was just sort of like a free seminar we got out of it. But they hooked up with Revision and then made a joint proposal for wastewater treatment plant and the energy efficiency contract at the same time. Which, if things went really well today, that contract RFP may have gone out the door today. It's been a year and a half. It works.
The energy efficiency portion was that tied to your buildings as well, or was it
Yeah,
Go
it's
around.
it's the physical plant of the entire
the
city.
entire city?
So,
Okay.
I mean, we'll do everything, and some of the, we just actually did an audit of the wastewater treatment plant. But we have lots of other hot points around the city, and that's also a way of educating across departments, about you know, you're not looking at these expenses, you know, and and trying to get the city to look more holistically when they're making decisions too, instead of having, you know, budget owners and departments saying, you know, okay, we'll let that slide and I can get this new shiny object done. But then when they do make a decision, they might be going like, we would like people to first consider converting liquid and gas to electric heating. That's one of our things that we're trying to get people to look at, but we need to be doing that more holistically and not, you know, making individual decisions. So that's a lot of what we're hoping will bring to get out of this.
Yeah, we're in our first year of an energy audit. Is it the first year?
Who's doing yours?
Tom, do you know the firm?
EEI, I think it is. What's his name? Mike Davy. You know him?
I don't know him, but I know the company then.
Yeah, they're smaller, you know, not nearly as Siemens.
Yeah, and they've done the elementary schools. They came and presented to us and they kind of rolled their eyes when they looked at this building, which is an old hospital. Pretty antique HVAC systems. I think they found good solutions at a lot of the satellite buildings, schools and things like that. This was a tough one. So. But because it's inefficient, it's a big opportunity.
And the RFP you were mentioning that might be going out like today, that was to actually do some of the work that came out of the audit?
No, this would be to actually do the audit
Oh, okay.
first and then, you know, do the performance contracts would come out of it.
Got it. Okay.
So going back to your solar project. You would power the sewer plant. And be behind the meter essentially, or have I got that wrong?
Well, the way things are working right now, you'd still have to draw power off the grid when you weren't producing. So that's one of the things in Portsmouth's been very good about supporting changes in how we regulate and incentivize utilities, but there's a lot going on right now. The CPCH has 5 bills before the legislature, which is essentially trying to get, and the simplest way to put it is that any distributed energy producer is, you know, has the option to sell to anyone that they want and be compensated fully for all the that they provide in terms of energy, but all the costs that they avoid, which doesn't happen now. And if you look at a larger entity energy bill like the cities, you probably see the transmission costs are pretty staggering. The distribution costs are pretty staggering too. So if you can attack those two pieces, you know, without driving up your energy costs at the same time, it's a really big win.
Yeah.
And just adding distributed energy, you know, has all sorts of benefits. And I always like to say first of all, it's a job creator. You're pulling energy, you know, into the community instead of having to buy it from out of state, or out of the country where it's coming from. It's got a long lifespan, and you know what it's going to cost 20 years from now. How many other things do you buy, you know, in terms of energy or power that you will know what the cost is going to be in the future. So those are all big wins, but we can't do it right now. And the law that was done in 96, if you interpret it the way CPC&H interprets it, says basically we could do all those things, but it's not happened. Right. And so we're pushing to revise some of the laws to make it explicit, how that should happen, and it shouldn't, really endanger utilities if they're if they're fairly, then they will always be, fairly compensated for what they deliver. But right now they're blocking the development of more innovative solutions. Or I
That-
should say, one of our largest utilities in the state is strongly adamant against it.
All five of those bills are on the CPCNH website. There's a
Coming up for a vote next week, House Committee.
maybe I can get it testify if anybody else would like to testify.
Too late to testify. So they already had a hearing on the 18th. And one of them is just insane. And that's the one that this last year, I just preach for just a couple seconds. Public Utilities Commission, and I think induced by at least one of the utilities, said, well, there's community power is going to make, default power unaffordable. I don't think it could never happen for Eversource, but it could threaten maybe Liberty, that they wouldn't be headed. But they could just go to the market and buy it from somebody else if somebody else is offering a better price. That's the argument. So what they did was they told the utility companies, from now on, we're going to require, not optional, when you're buying your default power, to not hedge it fully in advance, but to buy currently, and this was done in different dockets, but Eversource is doing 30%, Liberty's doing 50%, and Unitil's doing some creative thing.
Yeah, it was all
between.
different for each of
Yeah.
the three utilities.
But they're buying on the spot market. So, and for some reason, their estimated cost for their default power this time was much lower than it's been in any, guess why, recent winter. And so we're having this winter. Now, if you've looked at the spot market for electricity, but we've been at the second highest levels for 20 years for the cost of electricity on the spot market. So someone's going to end up paying for that. And the Public Utility Commission thinks that maybe, and they haven't made a final decision, but they did come testify against 760, which is really extraordinary. The Public Utility Commission testified about a bill. Never happened when I was in the House. They came and testified and they said, well, we have this under consideration, and they really wanted the bill killed. Well, I don't know why they want it killed if they weren't considering the one thing that everyone's concerned about, and if there's a cost deficit, if there's a price doesn't cover the cost, right? Someone's got to pay for that. So who pays for it? Well, you'd think that they just want, the utilities' own customers to pay for, the rate that they set. And they're proposing to spread it against all customers, which means that Portsmouth and Dover would be paying for, cost overruns that happened to other communities. And that seems blatantly insane. So the bill is trying to rectify that. And the crazy thing is that we're hearing from our government affairs people that it's likely to get voted down. And I mean, the other bills, are butting up against utilities front on. This is actually the Public Utilities Commission that's causing the problem. And,
So voted down would mean,
if the bill's voted down, then that plan by the Public Utility Commissions could go forward.
no,
You and I would be paying for overrun costs that we had nothing to do with.
Yeah, and I think where it really grinds my gears is is that when the utilities are setting their supply rates, they have the safety net.
Why not set them low?
Why not say?
Right,
Because you can't lose.
right.
If you get to the end of the rate period and your costs have shot up ahead of where you set your rate, you just reach into every ratepayer's pocket in the state.
Well, before they would hedge it. So when they set their rate, they had, really good idea and depending on what the PUC did to them when they set the rate. But usually they're very compliant at that point. The cost is covered, so. And what happened, what got this all started was, you'll remember 2 years ago when we had, that was 22 some cents. Go on that one. And
Yep.
they just made a bad purchase. It's what much worse than everybody else and the other utilities. Twice, I think, what the co-op did that year. They're much smaller, and so they shouldn't have been gotten a better price than Eversource did, but
Yeah, the situation a little different than that, Bill. The co-op hedge, they have a portfolio model similar to
Yeah.
CPC&H, where the utilities don't. At that point in time, they were just whatever the market was during those few weeks when they're required by the PUC to go out to get rates. That's why the rates were so high.
Yeah.
It wasn't that they were hedging or made a bad purchase. That's what the market was during the window of time when the PUC requires that they purchase. And that's just the way the regulations were at the time. And that's why the utilities have never, that's why the co-op's procurement model has been advantageous, because it's really what the CPC&H is modeled after. So it's a little bit different.
they're both hedging, because hedging just means you're buying ahead. So. But it's a financial term,
Yeah.
but they had more flexibility. The co-op had more flexibility about when they made the purchase. That's the difference. So. But,
Yeah, right.
but the other utilities still were significantly lower than 22 cents. But that's what incentivized the PUC to try and get creative and historically, if you looked at, 20-year span or something, buying, more frequently, more flexible gives you a better price. But the problem is sometimes it doesn't, for any given period of time.
Right.
And then the cost overrun or, underrun, has to be.
Question
Yeah.
on the phone.
Yeah, yes, Ben.
Can we get back to this conversation about solar? I have to move on to the next agenda item if that's all right.
Okay. Did you have questions, Ben?
I just want to lodge an objection to most of what that guy just said for about the last 20 minutes.
Well,
Fair enough.
Happy to debate it with you sometime. Sorry I can't be there in person tonight.
okay. Okay. Um. The, I was gonna ask about the interconnect study. We did talk about that. That's the $65,000 that Eversource is doing to look at their study of where you would connect, right? Their substation. Is we'd been quoted a figure more like $25,000 or $35,000 for an interconnect study, so. Did you,
So it's not just the interconnect study. So they're also doing, preliminary engineering study on the site.
okay,
Do you know what portion, as John was asking, that the interconnect, the fees that they paid on behalf of Dover? Was it in that range of $20,000-$30,000,
Yeah, I think, and I just don't remember, but something like
Okay.
20,000.
something like that, okay. So that sounds like in line with what we were hearing.
yeah. The reason that's relevant is we should get that into our capital improvement plan.
Yeah.
We need to have feasibility study wrapped up to go to the council and get that, but we don't want to miss that window. Although it may be more than a year out, maybe 2 years out from what you're saying. That's an interesting lesson. I mean, my takeaways from what you've described is, number one, you're really lucky with your land. As you say, it's a Goldilocks site. And you also have a substation nearby, which is,
Yeah, it's not close, but the service line from the substation is adequate, right? So that we think.
right.
But we won't know for certain until the study's done.
And is that because that service line is what feeds your wastewater treatment? Okay, yeah. Got it.
And power purchase agreement. You're gonna generate enough power. You're gonna generate more than the sewer plant needs. But, and this is where I'm a little murky. It's better to do a power purchase agreement than to go behind the meter because of the,
No, they'll both be behind the meter in terms, so the city's going to be. That's just a financing option. So it's always better if you, in today's market, to consume the power behind the meter. But you're always going to make, assuming that, the power purchase agreement is at a good rate.
Yep.
Or finance a project appropriately so that the long-term cost looks, attractive relative to what you're purchasing it from off the grid. Then consuming it behind the grid, you know what you're rewarded for, and if you put it onto the grid, you inevitably get rewarded less for it. So that's the big incentive for doing it behind the grid. So having something big nearby, consuming power, this makes it more attractive. Do you have anything at your site that's,
we've got the high school,
oh,
but it's probably between a quarter mile and a half a mile away. So, if we have to run pretty hefty transmission lines that far, it's a cost that we need to reckon with.
it's probably pretty easy for them to figure out though.
Yeah.
That's,
And does the city own all the land in between, right?
They do,
So that makes it easier.
right.
Because Dover has a similar situation, right? In that, if I heard, there is the Eversource property between where the site that you would build the array, assuming you don't buy the Eversource property and also put array there, you still, what's that, the distance, that linear footage from where you would build the array to your wastewater treatment plant? Because it sounds like
it's not far.
it's
but
not as far as what John was alluding to.
no,
Okay.
it might be 300 feet.
Okay.
100 feet, something like that.
We're a little bit further than
Yeah,
that.
300 feet would be nice.
Yeah. Okay.
But they might be able to, I don't, they might be able to do DC, depending on where they do their, where they put their equipment. And that would cut the costs of transmission. So
And put the inverter at the high school. There's apparently a substation at Tidewatch, which is a condominium association. The high school's on the west side of this. The condo association is on the south side. So, that that raises some interesting possibilities.
We also have the swimming pool too.
Yeah.
In addition to the high school, we have an indoor pool that's adjacent or on the same property
That's the high school.
as the high school.
Right.
Which
Separate,
is,
separate meter.
it's gotta be a big power consumer. I don't know what the monthly
Right.
electric bill is for that, but it's probably pretty high.
Um,
I guess that's a question too, is, do we, when we size the project, do we look at producing more power than those facilities actually consume? And economically, does it make sense to produce extra power or only up to, 90% or something of what we need for those facilities? I guess that's something that we'll have to look at.
When you were saying that economics are better if we use it all.
The more you can use behind the meter, that it pays off, but it's,
Yeah.
don't, the scale of the project, interconnection costs, if it's solar panels right now, today before the 25%
Tariff.
went in place have been very affordable, so, yeah, it's scaling up. If everything else is working, it's probably still beneficial.
Yeah.
But, you can't speculate, someone's gonna do the engineering and come up with some hard numbers.
And potentially would Dover look at a phased approach, maybe building a solar array that is X and then adding, Y and Z, or adding sections on later. I guess that would all come down to some sort of financial analysis to see what's the appetite if you did have to spend money. What's the appetite for what size at that time?
From this project, because we talked about two different sizes, it doesn't sound like it's, wouldn't do, 1 megawatt. Part of it is, you think about how the process of doing the site work would go. What equipment you need to service that, and, is that something that's easily, if you have to buy, one of the things that's real expensive right now are transformers. So expensive and hard to get. That's been holding up some projects, so they just can't get a transformer big enough to allow them to utilize the power.
yeah, we heard that at Exeter. They've been waiting for almost a year.
Really?
Transformer. Everything else is ready to go. The panels are out there, wirings, just waiting for a transformer.
Do the transformers come outside of the United States? Are they produced in another country?
I don't know, yeah.
But I guess they
Prob-
could.
Probably all of the above, but I
Yeah.
think it's just a supply and demand thing. So,
Yeah. Okay.
I was curious about, after 6 years, you're buying some of your other installations. When you say buying, how much of a capital spend is that? Or is it?
I wish I'd known you were gonna ask these questions. I brought some of the documents with me. Some of that may actually be on the website.
Yeah, we could look at it.
I could find it. I could tell you what the numbers are. But that's going to be part of, any financial decision you make. You'll make if you look at, you should probably look at a purchase agreement. And, see what the conditions are.
Yeah.
Some companies will always want to put escalator in. Which I personally don't like. Around 2% or something like that, just to cover basic costs that they will say for inflation, but it's a fixed entity that they're buying, so.
Yeah.
Got finance experts sitting at the end of the table here, let me tell you. Okay. But yeah. So in the contract, and you can negotiate, you can negotiate the length of times at which you can buy out. It's all, it's a negotiation.
Right.
You don't have to just take what they give you. That most of the companies come in with fairly similar proposals, I think. One of the problems, and one of the reasons we're not anxious to do RFPs right now is it's just so far out that the only way you could do a contract is would be a purchase basis, because it's too far out for an investor to really understand what sort of, return, and for the buyer to understand whether or not that's fair, because you just don't know what the rates are going to be in 2 years.
Right, they're trying to assess their risk and return for something that's 2 or 3 years away. See why that would make their stomach have butterflies. Other questions that you guys have?
Well, you may have mentioned this and I just didn't catch it. Are you using any sort of like expert consultant in this space and beyond revision and et cetera? Or is there somebody guiding the city as well, or you guys have the expertise?
We have some expertise, and Jackson was a tremendous asset, sure, but we still have Jackson, consult with Jackson. We've talked to, one of the best things to do is talk to variable, different contractors.
Okay.
And see,
Yep.
that starts coalescing. Mark at CPCNH is very knowledgeable about rates and, what can look at a contract and say, this looks competitive, or I want to try, see if you can work something out on this particular aspect of it.
That's great. The fact that they will give you that kind of assistance as part of their public purpose is really nice.
It's a good benefit. But most of when you go to a company like Revision, they will, work out if you're doing a PPA, they will show you what the cost benefits are over time, and where the point is. And it's going to be after 6 years, because that's when they stop depreciating. I think that's what's standard, 6 years for depreciating something. So at some point after 6 years, it starts looking more and more attractive for you to just go out and buy it at a depreciated price at that point.
Has Clean Energy New Hampshire helped you out at all? Like one of their circuit riders, like Katrina Casper or some others?
She's excellent, but not, I don't think we've gotten anything that's really helped with this process. I mean, they're struggling to trying to help make the overall environment more suitable and, flexible and cost affordable to everybody. But, taking individual project decisions is on this scale is not something I think. Yeah, I think, those are good resources. It's something that I've asked about in the past when the first time we looked at projects, is where can you go and get expert help on this? I've not found someone that was more substantial than going to 2 or 3 contractors and just saying, tell us, what you would do this for. Right. Is that bottom line? That's what it's going to come down to, is what someone's willing to do the work for. And you'll get informed by, different approaches to it.
Yeah, I think some towns have gone right to a very broad RFP and invited in 3 developers, and Exeter did this and said, what could we do with this site? What potential do you see in? And then they refined from there.
Yeah. It's probably helpful to try and constrain it to what you think you really need as best you can. you'll get better responses to your
Always, yeah.
RFPs.
The more specific you are in asking, the better the questions, the better the information.
We did a RFP a number of years ago and asked people to look at a whole bunch of places around the city. And I thought it was a bad idea at the time, and it was proven to be a bad idea because we just didn't get quality responses to it.
Too broad. But, well, I think everybody would agree that solar projects pay their way. But there seems to be a lot of different terms and relative levels of benefits that different towns get. And I suppose some of that has to do with how good the site is, how what the revenue versus cost is in that piece of land and that interconnect, things like that. But some of it seems to be just what you negotiate. What these different communities.
I think the first half of that was probably plays a bigger factor. It's just, what do they have available? How easy is it to develop that land? What's the solar viewscape for that project?
Yeah.
And, where the interconnection costs are.
Right.
So that can be a lot of pain, that last part of it, so.
Yes, I mean, that's been my worry, is that we have this beautiful piece of land that's south facing. And is used for nothing else. Which in a city that's so land constrained as ours is, it's crazy. But we might have to pay $500,000 to string the wires, or something like that. But maybe a developer looks at that and figures out how to absorb that over 20 years or 6 years or whatever.
Well, I guess the one thing I would say is if you were thinking long-term and you're a positive thinker, a solar installation that might have a 40-year lifespan or so, hopefully the powers that be will see that, they want to encourage this and will reward it better to the actual value that it's generating. And the other thing that hopefully will happen is that storage will become more affordable. So when you're overproducing at midday and midsummer, you have ways of capturing that energy and using it either yourself or selling it back at a better time in the market.
And the latest forecasts are 2% a year growth in demand. But, as homes and transportation electrifies, as data centers get built, maybe it's more than 2%. And I would think long-term that makes electrons more valuable. But the city would be in a good position, and your city's going to be in a great position with 4 megawatts of production, if that becomes more valuable over time.
I'd like to think so.
I like to think so, but I'm overly optimistic. Other questions?
Good, thank you. That's very helpful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
It's great.
Well, best of luck to you. And I'd like to keep us posted on what you're doing, and we find out things that we think might be useful to you. We'll pass them along.
Absolutely. And we'll tell you what we learned. And what we're a little further down the road on our energy audit. Maybe we can
Yeah.
share findings on.
Very interested to see if that comes out.
Yeah,
Well, great. Best of luck to you.
thank you.
Yeah, thanks
Bill.
very much. Appreciate it.
Good luck up there. We'll watch with interest.
No, my days are done.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Good.
Thank you.
Okay. Ben, did you want to,
Looks like we lost Ben.
okay. I take away from what Bill described, that you need an expert in your corner on this. And I think we're getting close to that. I know that staff is talking to some folks, but, I think that's going to be important. And it also helps that they had Jackson Kaspari as a energy and resilience focused key person. And interesting to see what.
Yeah, it's good to hear that he and others, Mark, the other guy there, you know, are a resource to us as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay.
I assume connecting him with like Peter Rice and Peter Britz and the folks that are kind of doing the lifting on that side right now.
Right.
Because they're not necessarily hearing these discussions or the discussion from, you know, Exeter, et cetera. So I'm sure you're passing it along. but
I am.
It's good to hear.
Yeah.
Kind of firsthand too.
Now, these are complex. And
And the runway, the lead time on these is,
that's a little daunting.
you know, that's kind of a takeaway that these things are not, you know, turnkey.
Yeah.
Get it done type projects.
Right, right, especially with the long lead times on these interconnection studies.
Yeah, you can't control all the parties, particularly obviously the utilities.
Yeah, the challenge, of course, is so much changes over, say, 24 months. A lot changes, and what are the energy prices gonna be 24 months from now?
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, we just don't know. Is Canada gonna stop, cut off, hydroelectric, and I mean, the whole world could be different years from now, so all you can do is just keep planning the project out, I think, and looking at what what are the options for physically building it, and then ultimately you've got to make the right decision at the right time and hedge your bets.
Well, I hadn't thought about tariffs on solar panels. That's,
Yeah,
that could,
and maybe in 2 years from now, there'll be more solar panel manufacturing here in the
that
US.
could be.
So that'll,
Yeah, I mean, that's like the fact that we rely on other countries to provide our solar panels is probably not a good place to be.
no.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
But there won't be well, we'll see what happens,
Sane minds prevail.
Yeah. You all heard about Brian Calnan's resignation. I don't know much more than's been in print. You all saw that Henry is stepping in as general manager. I did talk to Henry. He said that they're gonna have a more full disclosure of everything that's going on coming up. They're working on that right now. And he said we're very committed to that. And he thought it might be done today, but before I came over, it was not up on the website, so.
Did he mention anything? That press release didn't talk about a search for CEO.
It did not.
I don't know, maybe they're gonna ride for a while without one.
I don't know. He said that they're working on some integration issues with Ascend Analytics and Calpine and the finance people and
Mhm.
and I think he's gonna have a full statement on that coming out shortly. So that's all.
You think it's more than, say, Brian is just, it's time, he felt it was time to move on. You think there's more to it than maybe that, possibly?
I don't know.
Okay,
I don't know. I could speculate, but I
not
don't.
worth speculating. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I knew, I would tell you.
Yeah.
And I think they're in the process of figuring out how to tell the whole story.
Yeah. Okay.
And I did ask Henry, what do you think about this regulatory environment and how real a concern is that? And he's very concerned about the PUC new rules. And
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like that could water down the whole concept.
yeah.
Well, I think, I've mentioned this from early on. I mean, the CPCNH business model was based on a portfolio purchase approach that allowed them, to ladder and minimize risk and hopefully most of the time create a rate that was underneath the utility. And I was trying to articulate to Bill is, I mean, when he was talking about those high rates, I mean, the regulators require that the utilities go out to purchase before whatever changes they've been making now to say, go out into the spot market. They have to purchase in a very tight window. They go out to bid, the bids come in and the PUC, they open them in front of the PUC and the lowest bidder gets selected. It was as basic as that. And that's one of the advantages CPCNH has had because that's been the purchase model since deregulation in 1999. So CPCNH has had a more sophisticated purchase approach and it has allowed them, and as the co-op has, and that's kind of been the differentiator between CPCNH and the utilities that allows CPCNH to hopefully over time produce better rates. But now it sounds like they're doctoring a little bit in terms of allowing the utilities to go out and spot market, et cetera, et cetera. It's not a portfolio purchase approach, but it's a little bit different than they've been doing for 25 years.
Yeah.
But the issue of them being able to pass along the costs to those customers that are not taking default service, it'd be interesting to hear someone explain why they think that makes sense.
Well, right,
You know?
and that's the thing. If that passes, then CPCNH is in a lot of trouble because what's the point? Like if I'm a customer, I buy from Portsmouth Community Power, and then I get charged from Eversource for their not making good purchase decisions. I might as well just buy some from Eversource.
Right.
So we'll see.
Yeah. It's up to the legislature, but I always had a high degree of confidence in the portfolio approach because the New Hampshire co-op could always beat the utility.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, it just makes sense.
Yeah.
Because, and it can happen in reverse. I mean, there's been times where the utilities say, okay, we have to go out to bid between December 10th and December 15th. And the rates may be damn low at that point in time. They get a great rate and it locks in then for, the next 6 months, even though the rates might go up a month later.
Right.
So, I mean, it can go both ways and I think it has over time. But I mean, the utilities were directed to purchase that way as a result of deregulation. because that's just the way it was. But I'm surprised they don't allow the utilities. That's what I thought, that they'd allow the utilities to get back into like a full portfolio approach. Because I mean, they got the expertise and the brain power to do that as well as anybody. And that's not what they're doing now. They're kind of in between.
Yeah,
Right.
So, but I don't think the utilities wanted to get back into that because that's just more effort and manpower to do that.
Right.
And they could explain why the rates were the way they are now, because that's the way the regulators want the process to be run. But
Yeah, it was interesting to me that, and I don't know if Bill's accurate in this or not, but he portrayed it as the utilities saying, particularly the smaller ones, we may have the minority of the default customers. And at what point does that not become viable for us? That was what I was hearing him say.
although since it's a pass-through, what difference would it make?
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm buying power and then I'm selling less. Like.
Yeah, they're not making any money.
And they're also not putting they don't have money at risk, I don't think.
It's just a pass through. But I mean, the issue is the true up in terms of over and under collection. That process should just stay within the customers that are
Yeah,
on default service. Because those customers aren't locked there. They could go with CPC&H and they can go, or Direct Energy or anybody else. No one's tying them to be with Unitil or Liberty. But it's just be interested to hear what the rationale is for spreading the cost across all ratepayers and or consumers in the state of New Hampshire.
So it's the same situation if I was a Direct Energy customer,
yeah,
right? I mean,
exactly.
so is Direct Energy and some of those other energy providers, are they not showing concern about this situation?
Oh, I would imagine they testified too.
Okay.
Yeah. And they're also nationwide. I mean, they have big customer bases, and New Hampshire's
Yeah.
probably not the tail that wags the dog, but
I mean, the situation that we're facing right now with what happened with CPC&H, they set the rate at whatever, 8.9 or 7 or whatever. And then they found out that they had to, change it and get a different contract. CPC&H isn't allowed to then spread that additional cost back across
wouldn't it be
everybody.
nice if you could?
There's, we're as a CPC&H customer, we're eating it,
Yeah.
and
It's a great example.
it's almost,
Yeah.
the utility,
Right.
it doesn't have any exposure. And,
Yeah, and that's why I think it's fundamentally anti-competitive. Want competition. But I guess when the PUC told them you have to buy X% on the spot market, that should benefit our ratepayers. They said, well, what if we're caught in the spot market with very high prices? How do we protect ourselves? And, I guess that's how this approach came out of the PUC, that they could spread their losses across the whole rate base. But
I don't understand.
yeah, I mean, I don't understand and I don't agree with it. I have strong feelings about it. That's why I wrote the letter.
Yeah. How does the New Hampshire co-op, how does their model differ than, say, for example, Liberty? Are they considered,
They're not a public utility,
They're not
the
a
co-op,
okay,
it's not.
but their procurement model is similar to CPC&H's.
but why are they not considered a utility?
They're
Okay.
They're a nonprofit.
Yeah,
They're not investor owned,
and so,
but they own all the poles and wires.
yeah,
So they
They're
fully integrated, but not.
Those rural cooperatives have been regulated differently since, for 100 years.
yeah,
That's the way it is.
And they always correct you, they have members, not customers.
yeah. Okay, yeah, I'm about to be one of those their customers. And so, I was surprised at, I worked with Eversource and all, but I was having a conversation with them about installing proper, power to a property that I own in their territory, and it seemed incredibly cheap to put, X number of poles and so much linear footage. And I just thought, wow, this is, this is not Eversource. And I got the fact that they're, it's a nonprofit, and I thought, are they getting other funding because it's like they service rural areas? I don't know, thank you for helping me kind of clarify that. It's a very different model than, say, Liberty or Eversource or.
Yeah, I mean, back around the turn of the century, you'd get communities would put a hydro dam in and they'd form a co-op. And the co-op would provide the power, and it was a nonprofit.
Yeah,
A lot of rural electrification was done through those nonprofits.
They tend to have skinnier overhead. In terms of setting their rates, I don't think they have as much in the way of overhead costs as the utilities. All the
Yeah.
different programs and things that the utilities get involved with that ultimately get baked into rates.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's more to it than I can remember, but
Yeah.
But their procurement model though is they're managing a portfolio and laddering it and purchasing throughout the every month throughout the year, similar to what CPCNH is attempting to do. And the utilities just have not done it that way. They just procure within 2 windows over a 12-month period.
because the PUC says they have to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they don't have that same requirement for co-op.
Right. Right. But when the rates were crazy 2 years ago and they were 22 cents, talking to the CPCNH folks, I said, well, I mean, it's at 22 cents because they had to go out the week of December 15th and purchase. And then the market was crazy then.
Yeah.
What if that changes? What if the regulators say that model is incredibly restrictive and not, too financially astute? What if they changed it and made it more like what CPCNH wants to do, what the co-op has been doing? It fundamentally would impact our business model from a CPCNH perspective.
Yeah.
Sure, it really would. And had they not pushed for, I get the fact that they're pushing for this, hey, if we're short, we want to spread that across all the ratepayers. But you would think Eversource would be pushing to, and others would be pushing to loosen up that twice yearly going out for a bid process. Can we do it 4 times a year? Can we do it?
Continuously, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, it was always meant to be just backstop. The thought was 25 years ago, everybody was going to be moving to a competitive supplier. And it was just those perhaps financially troubled that a competitive supplier doesn't want to take a particular customer because they're a credit issue, or just a small number of customers would still be on default service. Everybody else would be on competitive supply.
Yeah.
And it was referred to as backstop energy.
Yeah.
Just for a small, but that market really never developed. And the way it is now here in New Hampshire with CPCNH and Massachusetts with the aggregations that have taken place, the market has changed. But they're still kind of operating under the same regulatory construct that was implemented in 1998, where they just purchased twice a year. And the regulator said, whatever you purchase for, that's where you're gonna, we're gonna select the lowest bidder, and that's what the rate's gonna be.
we're 25 years into the backstop then.
Yeah.
Saying.
Yeah.
Well, all of this that we're talking about really is a threat for CPCNH.
I think the new PUC rule that allows them to spread their cost is a threat,
Yeah.
And on the other hand, you can look at it in the big picture and say, everybody, thousands and thousands of New Hampshire ratepayers through CPCNH started seeing lower rates. And the PUC said, why can't Eversource customers and default customers and Liberty default customers get those lower rates? What do we have to change? And that's,
I mean, they've historically had a true up. You remember last 6-month period, Eversource said we over collected within the 6 months. We set the rate and the amount that we took in from customers more than paid for our contract. So then they had to go back and give a credit to, and that happens every 6 months. Usually it's very, very tiny. Last two, rate period, it was significant. And Eversource came in with a significantly lower rate than Liberty and Unitil because they had a credit.
Credit.
They had a credit, but it was just, that credit was just kept within their
ratepayers.
within their default customer rate base, they didn't spread that credit out to CPCNH, So, I mean, they've always had that true up model. Now it's continuing to be a true up model, but with more moving parts with this spot market purchase routine.
Yeah.
Sorry, John, I didn't mean to take us too far down that rabbit hole, but
no,
a good conversation, I felt.
yeah, it's important. It's important, and this community power has been great for Portsmouth the first year and a half. And we just have to see what shakes out. I mean, people are still gonna get electricity and
And maybe more of it as they continue to install heat pumps.
right. We don't have any public comment, do we?
Doesn't look like it. But we did skip minutes. We want to go back. to
Oh,
that.
yes. Good for you. Thank you, Jillian. Everybody had a chance to read the minutes?
I did.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay,
So move.
second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
I,
Aye. Okay. I will pass on any new developments from CPCNH in terms of the overall statement that they're planning to make. I'll get that to you as soon as possible. And anything else?
I got a quick NREL update.
Yes.
So I heard from Sharon from NREL, who's our point of contact there today. And she said they are continuing to work on putting together their final report recommendations. She feels that their team is going to need one more meeting with the group that we've been meeting with. And she's going to get back to me maybe later this week with some dates and times. We'll pull together that same group again so that they can ask maybe a couple more questions and then finalize their report. I do know that those folks from NREL that are supporting us are actually not federal government employees. They're contracted with
Oh,
government NREL.
Hmm.
So we want to get our report
Yeah.
before maybe any additional federal contracts that get terminated that we
right.
may be
Before
under.
they
Yeah,
end up on the
The-
wall of the website.
the Doge website.
Doge.
So,
Right.
hopefully we'll keep our fingers crossed that we get through the next couple of weeks and we get that output, that deliverable from them.
Yeah. Well, I tuned into part of that last meeting.
Yeah.
And you and I talked, but I thought that was excellent.
Yeah.
They were really drilling down to the right issues.
Yeah, and Eric has been, city engineer. He's been extremely cooperative. And so, when we started the engagement, it really was success, I think, was dependent on DPW, really leaning in and supporting with a lot of technical information about the sites and the power consumption and things like that. They've been great. They really have. And Enreal has commented on that.
Hmm.
That, you know, that's made a big difference is getting the data that they request when they ask for it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think we're all excited to see what the outcome is of that.
Are they still looking at April?
They are looking at the end of this month, March.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So, well, just a couple more weeks.
Very nice.
Yeah, well, let's stay tuned on that. Maybe certainly for our April meeting, we'll want to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
Maybe have them on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that would be fantastic too, if we could swing that, because they are, I think for the most part, they're based out of Denver.
Yes.
And so, you know, maybe just we're looking at time wise, maybe we can get them to,
Yeah, it's 5 o'clock their time,
yeah,
4:30 their time.
yeah. So maybe we can get them to join us remotely to do a overview.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, anything else?
Nope.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Have a great evening.
Yeah.
Two.